Trey Smith is valuable across this league, but no one needs him more than the Kansas City Chiefs. When did they get his deal done? I'll tell you that today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome in. It's Locked On Chiefs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day, across everywhere, all the time. Available 5 days a week, everywhere. Thanks for making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next listen. Just like the Locos do, we appreciate you guys being here every day. We do it for you 5 days a week, all year round, because that's what we do. We might take a day here or two in the summer, depending on what's going on. But for the most part, you're going to get it all the time from Chris, my podcast partner over at KC Chiefs Corner. You can find his written work there. You can find mine at NFL33.com as well as rgrfootball.com. We appreciate you guys doing that and checking out everything here on the podcast network. Trey Smith, it's a ray of sunshine and a cloud hanging over this team right now as we get into OTAs. We're going to cover what the Aftershocks will be when the deal is done, who that would affect the most. We'll get that. When could this timeline be coming true? That will cover that a little bit earlier here in the show. But we have to start with really what is Trey Smith's value? And that goes back to more than just one of the better right guards in the league. I won't say one of the best. I don't necessarily believe he's a top 3, but I do believe he's a top 5 to 6 at this point. I do think
specifically at right guard.
Specifically at right guard, yes. Okay. Because he is a power-based player, and this is a team that I am convinced not only has in the past, but needs to continue to be an outside zone team. Because I need them to come in with power and mix it up from time to time, because that's what I personally need. I need you to be able to dominate. But this staff clearly does not agree with me. They have dabbled far too long in a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I think it's been to the detriment of the run game. And I think maybe Trey Smith's biggest value is what he brings to the run game.
Could be. He is, I would argue, though, that his biggest value to this team is his attitude. And that comes out when you're run blocking, but it also comes out when you're on the field and you see somebody go after your quarterback or take a late shot at your quarterback, or just somebody that is, Trey Smith blocking downfield in the running game, or Trey Smith, leveling somebody on a pass block. It's the attitude that he brings that I think could be his biggest asset to this team, because when you look at the rest of the guys, I love Creed Humphrey. I think he's the best center in football, but I don't see that same attitude that I see from Trey Smith, and the Chiefs desperately need a guy with that attitude on the offensive line.
Yeah, that's fair. Somebody asked me recently, about the two of them and the whole, I think they were with Mahomes at the WWE event or whatever, with the belts and the whole 9 yards. And they're like, is that what they really are? Are they like a duo of wrestling dudes? Is that what they're going to do later? And I said, no, I don't think that is. I was like, that was a fun evening, whatever. I actually see them as more like Jake and Elwood, the Blues Brothers. Like, I don't know that either of them can perform as well without the other one, to be honest. And that's not a slight against Creed, but since day one, when they came in this league, they've been in lockstep together. And I think that there's a synergy there that is more than just the fact that you have experience, you know what he's going to do. I do think they lift each other's games together.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to play out this year, because the one thing that's going to be different than any other year is you have a different left guard. And there's nothing else that you can really do about it. I mean, yeah, you've had times where you've had a different left guard because Tooney was playing left tackle, but generally speaking, you're now going to be in a situation where it's somebody completely different and going to be somebody completely different from the get-go. So now Creed has to work with and get on the same page with that guy on his other shoulder. So that's going to change things as well.
Yeah, and it needs to make Trey and his bridge between Creed and Juwan to be that rock. So that's all to say that I think he has more value in Kansas City than he does anywhere else. Clearly, they believe so as well, because they're willing to use the tag on him. And that's where we currently sit, folks. So my question to you was, as you look at everything with the cap, What is his actual value from where you sit?
Well, when you start going and looking at the salary cap, he has a current APY of 23.4 million, and that's a little outside the realm of what normally you see when it comes to guards. And part of that is because offensive line is just one group when it comes to the franchise tag. It includes all the offensive tackles who are getting paid more than the offensive guards. He is right now the highest paid offensive guard in the NFL. And I don't know that I really see that changing too much. 23.4 is a little high for what I think he's going to get, but I do think that it's probably still going to be top of the market for the right guard position. And Chris Lindstrom is right now at 20.5. Landon Dickerson is at 21, and he's a left guard. So you're still looking at $21 million a year would be my guess.
And that's the hard part about the negotiation, right? So what you're saying is right now, in what should be a legitimate contract value, he's overpaid right now because of the tag. Is that a fair statement?
Overpaid is relative. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could easily say it that way. The way I would say it is that he's getting more than any other guard in football. But I would also argue that after watching Mahomes take a beating like he took in the Super Bowl, I'm okay with paying Trey Smith more than any other NFL guard in football. If they can't get a deal done, I'm okay with the 23.4. I hope that's not the case. I hope that they're able to get a deal done and they can make it work. But I would just about guarantee that 23.4 is going to come into the negotiations somewhere. I don't think it's going to be necessarily what he's going to get yearly, but I would guess that they're going to be looking at it, and his signing bonus is going to include enough to where it's going to cover what he would have made this year anyway.
I think you're probably right. And you mentioned one guy that I do think has a bearing on this, as well as another in Quentin Nelson that I think has a bearing on this. He and Landon Dickerson are the other guards that I think demand the level of pay that Creed should be around. They're both left guards. So it's not as much as tackles are, but I do think there is a little bit more emphasis on the athleticism at the left tackle spot than there is at the right tackle spot. I don't think that should make a huge difference because as you go down the list of the highest paid rest of the guards here in the top 10, the majority of them are rights, including Cosme, Miners, Freeze. Joe did obviously bring that up for the left guards as well, but Joe's an outlier in my opinion. And Chris Lindstrom's on that list as well. I didn't mean to leave him out, as well as Robert Hunt. Hunt reset the market at one time. I think Trey could reset it here yet again. So the question is how you get from that number to what the long-term number is going to be. How long does that take and what does it look like next? The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers the highlight-worthy performances, major momentum swings, and the can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never a better time to get into the action. FanDuel makes that super easy to stay in the game before the tip-off and when it's live. With player props, performance trends, as well as same-game parlays, fans have more ways to play than ever before and to win big. All you got to do, especially if it's an injury night or something is crazy going to happen, you can get into the action right away. If you've got a read on who's heating up because of it, right now you can get on the same game parlay. Easy, and you can win big with it. If you're new to FanDuel right now, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If that bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. Deals get done when deals need to be done. Deadlines do create momentum. I do believe that. But that timeline can shift. And I think the negotiation, what we've seen is kind of hot and cold. It was, hey, we're going to tag him. And then it was, hey, we're going to get this done. The language was very flowery and positive. And then things kind of changed when Trey was, I'm going to sign the tag and we'll see what happens. I felt like there was a tonal shift. And that makes me feel like this deal is going to take a little bit longer to get done. And as you said, 21 is the second highest paid and the only long-term contract APY on the books in the league. $2.5 million is significant per year. I mean, that's more than 10%. That's pushing 12.5%. of the annual income. Do you think that that's a gap that is going to be too hard to overcome easily and forces this timeline to lengthen as well?
I don't think that Trey is going to be looking at this from the perspective of he needs to have an APY that matches the tag. If he is, I think that this could he may end up playing under the franchise tag. I don't think Kansas City may be willing to reset the guard market to an extent, but $2.5 million a year, I don't think is really in their wheelhouse and what they're expecting to get done. I would think that they're looking at this from the perspective of, okay, we feel like you're probably in the. I guarantee you that they would have signed him to the same deal that they gave Creed Humphrey last year, which was $18 million a year. Obviously, 18 and 23.4 is a lot different. So, where does that end up? Does he end up closer to 20? I would imagine, maybe even 21. I just don't see them going to 23.4, just because that's not where the league is. I mean, the reality is that guards don't get the franchise tag, and this was an anomaly versus something that was expected. I mean, we were talking for most of the first part of the free agency conversation of the fact that Trey Smith wouldn't be in Kansas City, or maybe he was going to get a free agent deal from Kansas, or a deal from Kansas City, but it was going to be a free agent type money. Now at this point, he can make 23.4 if he really wants to wait to get paid, or he can come down a little bit and get the 23.4 he's going to get this year, plus some in the signing bonus, and have an APY that's a little bit less.
I think that's pretty much the discussion, and it makes it that much more precarious knowing that it's, we're talking 2.5% here. I'm sorry, 12.5% as the gap. So is there enough to make that deal worth signing? I agree with you. We've come a long way since we both thought that he would not sign a franchise tag if it was put on. And before that, we didn't think that the franchise tag be used on a guard. So if we flip it on its head, does the fact that they used the franchise tag on an offensive guard, does that automatically throw out what we usually know about how these negotiations go? Does that stand it on its ear? Are they willing, because of that, to go to that APY if they have to? And do you think it could become prolonged, I guess is my question.
I would say it could be prolonged if that's what he's wanting. I don't think that they're going to be getting there. I don't think that the Chiefs are going to be offering that. I would think that it's maybe he resets it at 21.5 or 22, but I don't think they get all the way 23.4. The reality is that while you want him on the team and you want him protecting Patrick Mahomes, you have to look at the full picture of the Chiefs salary cap. And while they can move on from Jawan Taylor in 2026, that's possible. Mm-hmm. Is that something you're going to want to do? We'll see. But the reality is that you have to have a team around him. You have to have, and having left tackle, here's the other side of that. Having a left tackle like Josh Simmons, if he can come in and actually take over and be your left tackle for the next 10 years, that helps because he's going to be on a rookie contract for 5. So then maybe you feel like you can pay some of that. But you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do at right tackle next year if you're going to release Jawan Taylor. So you're going to have to be spending money at the offensive line position regardless. And are you going to go out and draft somebody? I mean, I guess you could flip if Simmons works out, you could potentially flip Jalen Moore to right tackle and have him do that, and maybe that is what ends up happening. But offensive line is going to be something you need to invest in. And as long as Trey Smith is blocking for Patrick Mahomes, I think it's worth it. I don't expect them to get this done probably in the next couple of weeks. I would think it's probably something that will get done before he gets to training camp. But I mean, it could be going much later. He signed the franchise tag already, so he's guaranteed that 23.4 at this point.
Unless another deal is reached, absolutely. And that's why I agree with you. I think it could take that long. But when it hits, it's going to be seismic for a lot of people. Who feels the effects the most? That's next. Make sure that you like, sub, hit the bell here on Locked On Chiefs on YouTube, but you can find us on audio. You can be subbed on both. Don't worry about it that way. If you're out and about for the summer and you're not going to watch, you have a chance to listen as well because we're going to keep it rolling for you all summer long. Don't miss out. I think the Aftershock thing is an apt metaphor because this is a big contract either way. And as you said, you have to figure out something. You have to continue to invest in the offensive line as long as Patrick Mahomes is here. So if they can't reach it, if the worst case scenario B comes to pass and they're not going to be able to get it done, he's got to play on the tag. Because at some point they will walk away from the discussions and just say, it is what it is. We can't be distracted during the season. We got a Super Bowl to go try to win. It will come to that. So who feels the effects of that the most? Because I think that puts a lot of pressure on Trey himself. But I also feel it puts a lot of pressure on the team to find out what they have behind him in the form of either Hansen or Norzad or trying to push Caliendo somewhere. I feel like that changes the scope of what they have to know.
It's going to have huge effects across the entire team because the reality is that if you don't get a deal done, and if we look at it from just the monetary perspective, you're not freeing up cap space, which you're probably expecting to use for a Patrick Mahomes restructure in the coming years. I mean, that's part of all of this. You look at what Josh Allen just got in Buffalo, close to $55 million a year at this point. Patrick Mahomes' deal is going to have to get reset at some point, and you need to be able to free up some space. Yes, Travis Kelce is probably in his last year and probably will free up some space, but you're going to have all these different things that are going to be playing into it. And when it comes to the aftershocks of this deal, you're going to have aftershocks on the offensive line. You're going to have aftershocks with Patrick Mahomes. And the other side, the other reality is you may have some aftershocks on defense too, because if you don't get this deal done, getting a deal done with a guy like George Karlaftis or Trent McDuffie or Leo Chanel becomes a lot harder.
That's what I think is really interesting because obviously he comes off the books in a year, but that doesn't give you the longevity that you're looking for because then you probably have to go spend some money on a guard. I don't know that you can just either you have to have supreme confidence in one of the backups now, the young guys in particular, to slide into that spot, or you got to go do something drastic, which takes cash off the table for guys like George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie. And honestly, even more importantly, backups like Jalen Watson, like Najee Johnson, Joshua Williams, and not just corners, just they happen to be the highlights of that draft class. It's the timing that I think makes it that more difficult, all the way up to Brian Cook and everybody else that is close to a contract, but has to have this big domino fall first. Everybody's going to start feeling that. And I think that just puts a lot of undue pressure, not just on Trey, but on the rest of the roster during this season that they feel that they need to push for Travis's whatever it's going to be to get back to that Super Bowl and win it.
Well, and the other part of that is that you sit here and you look at the roster and you go, okay, could you really go into the season with Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Brian Cook, Najee Johnson, Josh Williams, and I mean, could you really go into the season and Leo Chanel all with no contract extensions?
No.
Technically, you could. It's not. It's not something that you want to do, but you could. The nice thing with like guys like Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis is you kind of already have a baked in next year because you have their 5th-year options already picked up. So that's already something that you've already got what next year's cost is going to be relatively close, at least because you're going to have, signing bonus if you make a deal with them before. So it's going to be a little interesting to see how this works out because if they don't get a deal done with Trey Smith, it affects what you can and cannot do with some of your other players that you're wanting to necessarily extend. I don't know that you can probably feel like you could extend some of the other guys because you don't know what you're going to have. One, at Trey Smith's position, but two, they have like $10 million in cap space available right now. That's not real because it's only accounting for the top 51 on the roster. And if you leave Trey Smith there, I would imagine you need at least 3 to probably feel comfortable operating throughout the season. That's about what they normally take into the season. And I'm guessing they would lose 2 or 3, if not more, to the bottom tier players. Actually, they're definitely going to lose more than 2 or 3 million on the bottom tier players, because you're probably not going to be cutting a lot of the guys that are making the top money. But maybe you have, and that's the other thing. That's a whole nother level of this. Does not getting a deal done with Trey Smith force them to cut somebody that they weren't wanting to cut because of money?
I have a hard time seeing that, at least this season, because I feel like they can walk the wire for now, but it doesn't mean it won't happen next year. There'll be some attrition, obviously. Like, here's the list of free agents as it stands right now for next spring. Trey, obviously. Travis will be out of a contract, but he'll be 37 years old. And I think we all know how that's probably leaning. But Hollywood Brown, even if he has an explosive year, he's a free agent next year. Charles Omenihu, Elijah Mitchell, Nazi, as we mentioned, Jerry Tillery, who I think they're counting on right now to play some significant snaps. James Winchester, he might be ready for training camp, but judging on his first day back, but he's 37 years old. They're going to have to find another snapper or bring him back on whatever deal they can get. Kareem Bryant Cook, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mike Pennell, Tui Pelotu, Mike Edwards. Obviously, we talked about Leo already. The backup quarterbacks, both of them in Minshew and Zappi, they're both out. Janarius Robinson, Josh, we talked about. Mike Caliendo is another one. Justin Ross is another one. The punter Reza is another one. And I can't believe we've gotten this far. Isaiah Pacheco is also a free agent next year, along with everybody else from that draft class. There's just too much to try to get done.
I didn't bring up Pacheco because I don't think there's any way he's back in Kansas City, personally. Okay, unless he's willing to take a sweetheart deal. I don't think that they don't seem to be the team that's going to be willing to pay a guy at that position decent money. And so I can't imagine he's back in Kansas City. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people love him. I like him, but I just don't see them paying him long term. Obviously, a good season could completely change how they feel about him. So we'll see. But he's also ended, isn't it the last 3 years at least? Pretty much his entire NFL career, he's ended on injured, not necessarily on injured reserve, but having an injury of some sort that he had to recover from during the offseason.
Yeah, beat up. The guy's beat up.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
And that makes it really hard to want to spend money on him in free agents or in re-signing him as a free agent. So you have a ton of guys that you're going to be looking at that are free agents, and there's a lot of those that may be on another roster this year that you already mentioned. There's several, well, maybe not a lot, but several that could be on another roster this year. The biggest domino is Trey Smith. They absolutely need to get Trey Smith's deal done. And the second they get that done, then you move on and you try to figure out, okay, what can we do with Trent McDuffie? Because the reality of this is you look at it from the perspective of who is the most important guy on your team to keep around. And it's Trent McDuffie. Even more so than Trey Smith. Trey Smith is in a situation where they need to get his deal done because of the franchise tag. But to me, Trent McDuffie is more important than Trey Smith is, because he is your best player on defense outside of Chris Jones. And if you lose him, and I know you have him for another year, if you lose him or you let him go another year without getting a contract, it is going to cost you, and it could cost you a very, very pretty penny.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think that's part of the built-in plan. I do think that will be utilized. And I will say this again, the force multiplication that Trey Smith is on the offensive line is not something they can allow to move out of town. For the sake of Patrick Mahomes and all things holy, you've got to get that done.
Yep, you absolutely have to. But that has to be done. That has to be something that gets done. And hopefully it gets done by the time training camp starts. When do these normally get done? It's when you have a deadline. The problem is he's already signed the franchise tag, so there is no deadline. Deadlines usually spur actions. I wonder. I mean, look at what happened last year with Noah Gray. We had no idea that they were looking at trying to re-sign Noah Gray. They got him re-signed right before the season started. Is that a situation where what we're looking at with Trey Smith? Possibly.
Yeah,
that would really stink for Kansas City.
The clock's ticking. I think you got to get done as soon as possible. And as much as it may hurt, you're going to have to do it. What do you guys think? Let us know in your comments down below here on YouTube, or in your thoughts on X or in the Apple Podcast reviews. We would appreciate it. You locos, we're going to be back for you tomorrow. Make sure that you're here with us. We appreciate you very much. There's a lot going on as they get ready to really forge into phase 3 and get after it to get back on the road to that next Super Bowl. Hope you guys have a good one and join us tomorrow. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you then.